Here we go.
Good morning. How's it going?
Good. I'm on the. I've never experienced jet lag, but if you ever come back from Vegas, it's that day or two that you come back from Vegas that you kind of get acclimated with the time and the sleep and stuff. So, but that's where I'm at right now.
The Vegas hangover is real. Like the 2 hours, I always tell myself, I'm not going to convert to the Vegas time because then the coming back is just brutal.
You're supposed to go to rest, and for some reason, I never rest. I feel like I'm just always up.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a good time, but it is what it is. It just takes a day or two to kind of acclimate. So, Courtney Gill, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
GSG.
Property Management.
I feel, but you have a lot of different hats, right, that you wear.
Absolutely.
Tell me what other businesses you're involved in.
So after years of doing property management, it kind of dawned on me. I had this great referral database of vendors that really did an amazing job and worked well together. And so we spun off a couple of years ago and started our renovation company. A lot of times after multiple years of having a house or property management, you need flooring, you need painting and all of that. So we do that. And then we also offer staging. So vacant homes, helping them put their best foot forward.
Kind of like an all-in-one. So property management, is that your background? Is that what you've been doing most of your life? Or?
So born and raised in San Antonio and have a parent. Actually, I had a grandfather who was a home builder, and then I married a home builder, go figure. And then my mom is a realtor. And so I worked for a real estate agent my senior year of high school got my real estate license.
Out of high school?
Right out of high school. Actually sold my first house before I graduated high school. So,
no way.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've enjoyed a great run, and I did that. And I bought my first house and I had a nightmare loan experience. So I was like, I can do this better. And got my mortgage license and did that for about 10 years. And then I got pregnant with my daughter and said, I need something more stable, easier than mortgages. And my mom had about a 30-unit property management company at the time. And she goes, why don't you buy me out? And I'm like, well, that sounds great.
Really?
Yeah, let's dress. Said no one ever. I think my mom was like, here you go.
She's like, let you kind of handle all this from now on. Unload it.
Yes. And so I bought her out in 2009 with 30 doors, and we've grown to 350 units right now in management.
Wow.
So been a little bit bigger actually, but now I kind of have a rule that it's such a trust-based relationship that if I wouldn't have you in my home for dinner, I don't want to manage for you.
Yeah.
Just because we are managing most people's single largest asset. So need the communication, need the good working relationship with people.
As you get that big and that much responsibility, you definitely have to kind of weed out all the bad potential clients that you have. Because now, at this point, it's probably not just a numbers game. It's having value type clients that's, that can take care of you and you can take care of them.
For sure. And I tell people we take any property at any price point. Our bigger goal is to make sure the homeowner wants to maintain their asset, right? So they're paying attention to things like their property visits and rent and making sure we're putting good quality folks in their properties. So it's definitely been a learning lesson over the years of what our ideal client looks like. We have a fair amount of clients that they're investors. Their end game for wealth was real estate, which I still believe is the number one way to wealth. But we always have our accidental homeowners, right? Homeowners who bought a house, couldn't sell it. A lot of military folks, right? They're only here for 2 years. They have a VA mortgage, and so they move on. So they need to turn their home into a rental. And so I'd say that's probably about half of our database right now.
What's the challenge with the market right now with, I guess if you've experienced it already.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of that roller coaster ride in the residential real estate market or construction market or any type of trade. It's like we have to be kind of wired a different way to kind of stomach those ups and downs. But as far as like filling up those units, is it harder to do that with the rents right now as high as they are? And
yeah, definitely a unique time. So in the 24 years I've been doing this, 2008 was really tough. I had just closed up my mortgage business, and we were seeing a lot of properties that were being foreclosed on. A lot of
that was
loans.
right at the beginning of the recession back then.
For sure. So getting doors filled then was a different challenge. I'd have homeowners getting foreclosed on, not telling me, right? Or we'd have 17 rental properties in the same community where we're competing against each other. Now I feel like San Antonio's just priced ourselves out of affordability. And so this summer, I felt like of all summers, we were seeing more houses going into rental because they weren't selling, right? Interest rates were such a challenge. And then the mortgage payments people had in order to cover the rents were even higher. And we were seeing more competition. So we were kind of getting creative this summer, lots of reduced out-of-pocket moving into properties. So we'd offer a week or two free of rent, just trying to incentivize people cash seemed to really be the challenge this year, right? They could maybe manage the monthly payment, but coming up with several $1,000s between deposits and rent, and you're probably still paying rent over here, plus moving expenses. So we tried to help kind of offset that to get our units filled this year.
You don't realize how challenging it is just to afford a house nowadays. And like our kids, my oldest one's 23. I've got a 20 and a 17-year-old, but the definition of an American dream I think has changed dramatically. You graduate, college, have a family, get a house. It's like, that's not so easy to do anymore. Most people can't even barely rent a house. And it's insane. It's crazy.
I was at a conference last week and they talked about the median age for first-time home buyers has gone up at 1 year every year for the last 5 years. So what used to be the American dream starting off in your early 30s is turning into your late 30s. And 50% of all first-time home buyers got a gift from their parents. So get out your wallet, Richard. Your kids are going to be coming to you.
Hey, they can probably just stay with me for as long as they want, maybe. No, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I'm already plotting my...
I'll work with a property management company to hook me up, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put them in a nice rental close by.
They can all live together.
Well,
it's funny because all three of my boys are with me right now because the oldest one was out and he still has another year in school but he'd been out for years living on his own in San Marcos. My middle son went through 1 year of school, lived in an apartment by UTSA, which that's a racket too. I mean, they charge these guys basically $1,000 a month each roommate. There's like 4 of them in a freaking small little apartment. And, it's insane what they're charging. Part of what I wanted to do is potentially get a house, which I do have one by UTSA, and then have them move in there. But I was like, nah, these guys will probably, turn it into a fraternity house. But it's just insane how it's so hard even just to rent an apartment. But so anyway, after this first year, my middle son was like, I'll just come back home, save some money. I was like, okay, I told you. Then my oldest son just needs a little bit more time, but he didn't want to commit to a whole nother year. So they're back all at home right now, which my wife and I were kind of used to just my youngest son and us. It was just kind of, so decluttered and just, we didn't have
food bill.
Exactly. HEB wasn't as expensive. And not to mention we have 2 dogs. They have 2 dogs. So it's like now there's 4 dogs. So it's a madhouse right now at the Cavazos
and your
residence.
Poor wife. There's one.
Oh, for sure.
One of her.
Well, we just got back from Vegas, I was telling you, and we got home yesterday. And I mean, we knew that they were going to throw a little party, or they call them kickbacks now.
Oh, that's a new term on me.
Yeah, it's not even a party.
A kickback.
So I don't know if it's supposed to sound not as crazy, but
in my industry, kickbacks are not a good thing. So I'm just curious.
I get home and you can always tell when they've had a party because they kind of clean up and there's like things are kind of in order but all you got to do is go to the side of the house, look at all the trash bags that are in the trash. Our basketball net is in the pool. It's nice. Like, okay, all right, well, it must have been a good time. But it's just insane because like in our neighborhood, you're not allowed to park on the sides on the streets. And you have to all be on the in the driveway, which is there's like 6-7 vehicles in our driveway right now. So it's like this little game of car karaoke to get all these vehicles out in the morning, depending on who's leaving, and so it's an interesting time right now, and we'll enjoy it as it is what it is. But because sometimes whenever we were kind of just us 3, my wife and I, my youngest, we were like enjoying that peace. But then now that they're all back, it's a little more chaotic. But eventually they'll move on back out somewhere and.
We sold our big 5,500 square foot house with a guest house because I just had this bad feeling.
You didn't want people to come back.
I did not want anyone coming back home. And so my husband has 4 and I have 2 and 7 grandkids. And I was like, man, we're just opening ourselves up for people to want to move back home.
That's actually pretty smart.
Yeah. Oh, no. I was like, let's downsize into a nice little 2,000 square foot.
I want to actually get a bigger house and get a house with a casita mainly for like eventually my dad or my mom, someone to move in. But I don't know. It's still up in the air, depending on. I like your strategy to just kind of downsize.
But what we're seeing on the rental side, like we have a big one kind of near you over by that HEB on Wilderness, and they've got 3 generations living there, right? Couldn't swing, and we're talking professionals making good money, and it just worked out mathematically for grandma stays home, watches the kids so they're not paying daycare, so we've literally got grandma and grandpa, parents and kids living on a property, which is interesting dynamic, right? And then what I appreciate about it is some of that older generation and wisdom really tends to take care of things. They have the 40 and 50-year-old ovens, right? So I've noticed really take care of our properties, right? They have a lot more pride of ownership, and
I'm sure the yard also, just exterior.
Yeah, because they've got the time too. One's at home and they're kind of fiddle farting around, putting in flowers, just really making it their own and not treating it as just, oh, it's a rental property. And so definitely seeing value. The other thing I saw, especially a couple years ago, we have a lot out in Bernie, and we have a lot of folks that sold their big houses in Cordillera, Anaqua Springs. Kids are all gone, and they're doing dual houses, right? So they have a little place here in San Antonio, kind of a crash pad, and then they might have something, up in Minnesota or Michigan for the summertime. And so definitely seeing that be way more of a rental pool than in years past. I think they just want the turnkey of they want to show up, they want to pay their rent, and they want someone else to manage the whole AC units going out, yard, all of that for them. So interesting dynamic, right? And they're gone for big stretches at a time, but they just want to show up and do their thing and leave.
Yeah.
So.
I think with the culture, with having the 3 generations in a house, I think that's something that's, prevalent in the Hispanic community. I know the Indian community, I've got some neighbors there that they have a large family there, but it's smart to save money, to just be able to, everyone kind of be resourceful, do their part, especially in this climate right now. Because the challenge too is like, if you sell your house, well, it's not as crazy as it was a year or two ago, but then the challenge is, where do you go? You downsize, but you're probably spending just as much sometimes, and then the rates go up, and it's like, well, might as well just stay home and have your dad or mom move in, or your
Well, we did downsize. We downsized dramatically, and my husband's like, "How come our mortgage payment didn't change?" And I'm like, "Well, because we went from financing, XYZ at 3% to the same amount at 7 or 8%, and
you'll probably save money in the long run because you're not going to have anybody come back to your house.
It'll save my sanity, which is priceless.
Your
Richard.
HEB bill is going to be cheaper, which is insane. And so, how do you acquire more clients? Is it just mostly word of mouth, network, or
we work strictly by referral? Really, what I tell people is I want to show up and provide value in your planning for wealth. So that means annually doing kind of a recap of where your house is going, what your financial goals are, where we can help you succeed in that. And all I ask in return is that you refer us to like-minded people, right? Good people refer good people. So it allows my database to stay really awesome. A lot of people know each other. So I'm able to host client events, and it's not there's one group. Everybody kind of has a general feeling and vibe for each other. And so we really just found over the years working by referral for us is the way to succeed, way to deepen relationships, have more meaningful relationships with people, and to show up for them with their largest asset. So
you don't handle this all by yourself. You have to have a big team, I'm assuming.
I do. Yeah. And I was telling somebody the other day, in 24 years, I've got the strongest team I've ever had. Minus my husband, I have to whip him into shape every now and again. But we have a total of 6 members on our team. We have, we've kind of embraced the virtual assistant concept that I've actually done that now for years. And before it was trendy to do, but really find that that's a great resource for doing paperwork. And then I have 2 internal staff members that kind of just help handle day-to-day calls, problem shooting, things like that. And then Michelle and my husband are both out in the field checking on properties, signs and lock boxes, showing our units. Michael definitely oversees a lot of our renovation side of things. He was a builder for 40 years, so he's got those eyes.
That's good. That's a good asset to have.
Yeah, and he's fluent. I'm working on it every day.
That's right. You're still learning how to speak Espanol?
Pre-ply every day for 45 minutes.
How's that going?
Oh,
Do you want to practice at all?
No, thank you. Not on broadcast YouTube. I really thought it was going to be easier. Yeah. I really thought, 45 minutes every day is such a commitment. Like if you work out 45 minutes a day, you should see results. Yeah. Apparently not on Spanish.
But you have to kind of speak it though. Try to just have conversations with people that's how I learned just at an early age, because I grew up with my mom and my stepdad was from Mexico, so they spoke a lot of Spanish, and then my grandmother just spoke Spanish. So it's like you're kind of almost forced to, and you slowly. And actually, we learned a lot of the good Spanish from my stepdad because he was from like Guadalajara, down, and so there was
more
just proper, not the Spanglish, that you get from the border towns. I grew up in McAllen, so a lot of the Spanish was just a lot of that Spanglish with the bad words mixed in.
Well, my husband will be up in the morning while I'm doing class, and he'll hear me, and I'll ask him a question. He'll give an answer, and she's like, "No, that's border Spanish. That's not." That's Spanglish, Michael. That's not. Don't be teaching Courtney that.
There's subtle things or little things. And actually, what's really cool is when I started off, one of my biggest clients was a gentleman from Mexico, international, and he had a lot of properties. And I met him. He called. He was referred to me. This was like literally like a year into me starting off on my own. But he called because he gotten referred to me. And he's speaking to me in Spanish right off the bat. And then I just talked to him. He's like, and he's telling me in Spanish, he's got a house at Dominion he wants me to go look at to do some work. And I said, sure. And he goes, can you go right now? Because a lot of the thing with the internationals, it's like, it's their time, you know, no matter what time it is. Like, and so I was like, sure. So I follow him, and he goes to where the main, he hadn't even gotten his key to the house yet. So I think it was whatever, the HOA there at the entrance back then. And so we park. And then he goes, just get in my car. And then he takes me to the house, tells me what he wants. And I'm talking to him in Spanish the whole time. Right. For the most part, what I feel is proper. And then we get back out, and he goes, okay, when can you start? He's telling me in Spanish again, right? And I'm like, you know, as soon as you want. I just got to get you some numbers, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, what do you think it's going to be? I'm like, I don't know. Is it around this? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, look, hang on to the keys, send me an estimate, and then get started right away. Yeah. And he just gave me the keys to get going. But I think the advantage was the fact that I had that knowledge of the Spanish, and I was able to kind of communicate with him and just really relate to him where he felt like he could trust me right off the bat. And that actually built a little relationship for a good year and doing some work. And I've had a bunch of customers that have fed off of him just because I was able to communicate. It's just an interesting dynamic, because in any business, you obviously have to speak English. English is you know, some people aren't even articulate in English, and they speak English. It's so important, but having that extra language sometimes could be beneficial, depending on the industry.
And for me, it was being able to communicate with our trades. Two of my staff are bilingual, but you know, to be able to go show a property or talk to a homeowner or anything like that in Spanish, it was super important for me to be able to bridge that gap, right? To have that communication with them, and at least if nothing else, they know I'm trying, right? I'm making the effort, and there might be a little, you know, misunderstanding here or there. I thought somebody the day I was at an appointment, and I had taken Michael, but I was like, let me see how much of this I can navigate, right? And I totally misunderstood. She was talking about the sprinkler, and I thought she was talking about her husband was broken. And I was like, oh, okay. But she was saying that her husband had installed the broken sprinkler, and I missed the whole like installed portion of it.
Her husband was broken.
I was like, what's wrong with your husband?
Well, I think you called the wrong person out here.
I was like, I'm not a therapist, but I feel like a therapist sometimes in property management, because I mean, the reality is people buy, sell, or rent for usually stressful situations, right? Job changes, had a baby, got divorced, had a death. And so all of what happens in the resale side happens in the property management side, right? And my stepdad jokingly always tells me that property management is like a 365-day option period, right? There's that constant communication going on.
You're on call, right?
You're on call all the time. And so you get downtime, but then there are times where it's like, okay, make the phone stop, especially, you know, July when ACs are out and, you know, you can't get to people fast enough. And so it is definitely going back to the trust aspect of things. Changing my business model and only working by referral allowed where I go to a property, right, there's already a built-in layer of trust because they know we've taken really good care of their friends or family. So when I show up, I'm not trying to sell my service or sell us and then explain property management. Like, property management is a huge animal. So by taking out all this time to like, oh, this is why we're great, and just laser focus in on, hey, here are some expectations you should have. Here's when your payment should come in. Here's what the law says about evictions. It allows people not to feel so overwhelmed by the volume of information coming at them. So it's really been, number one, I think, allowed me to have a better feel for what my homeowners want and expect, because I'm spending that time with them in explanation mode as opposed to sales mode. So it's been a great run. I've really appreciated doing property management. I believe in real estate, obviously. I've got a 11. She just turned 11 on Friday. 11 and a 15-year-old. And so I keep asking them who's going to take over in 20 years. And they both keep looking at me like I have a third eye. So my big one is definitely more of the interior designer of the family, which my grandmother was. And so my little one is very, very strict and disciplined. And so I think she's going to make a great property manager, because I tell people, you know, property management gets sticky when it gets personal. So the more on the let's follow the lease you can do. For anybody who's contemplating self-management, I give them the piece of advice as treat this as a business. It's not a personal relationship. If rent's due on the 1st and it's late on the 3rd, then it's late on the 4th, you know, or whatever those rules and boundaries are. And a lot of times we step in where people are renting to their brothers or their sisters or their kids because they're like, look, we don't want to hear it. And we know if they're paying you, they're going to pay on time. If they pay us, they'll get around to it. Or the repairs, right? We see this a lot with property management, somebody will call in and say, oh, my toilet's clogged. Typically, it's because the tenants put something down the drain or the resident has that they shouldn't. And so for us, all of our vendors are trained of, hey, was this something the tenant caused? Did this just happen? Or is there a bigger issue we need to try and triage? And so for us, it's very systematized, right? You send out, if you're the homeowner and you go out and do your own repair, it's like, well, I found G.I. Joe. And then there's just this element of, well, did you put him down there? You know, things like that. So the cleaner you can keep it, the better. Sure. Just like a 401k, right? You don't typically manage your own 401k. And I tell all my clients, having a piece of real estate is just like a 401k. You got to put money into it to get money out, right? It's always going to see a level of growth. If you look at any 10-year window, you just have to make sure that, hey, when times like now, rents are a little off, you got to compensate, or we got to plan for carpet every 5 to 7 years. Or as you know, dealing with me, we're a big LVP fan. We have gotten out of the carpet game. Carpet just doesn't have the longevity. People with allergies and pets and things like that. So we're slowly converting all of our properties to LVP for wear and tear.
So how have you evolved over the years and with your experience? I mean, obviously, when you started off, your mom kind of said, here, take it. Did you kind of get some guidance under her for several years? So you just kind of took it and ran with it?
It was a lot of trial by error in the beginning. And, you know, back then we didn't have the technology we have now. Back in the day when I would pay 100 owners, it would take me 8 full hours to pay, 100 owners, right? Doing all those statements on Excel and everything. And now, I can pay 350 owners in less than 8 hours. And so the other thing I've learned over the years, I find friends will call me and ask me, and I just tell them, you do the right thing and it typically works out, right? You have your Texas property code, you have your Texas licensing for your real estate license. You have to be a licensed realtor to do property management for anybody else. But beyond that, when it gets in the gray area, I try and find the win-win. And there's not a law for everything, right? There's a lot of gray areas in property management. And so I've just found over the years, if you can kind of come together, negotiate things out, both parties will be, okay with that decision, right?
You're like a mediator, basically, at the end of the day. I mean, you're going to favor the owner at the end of the day.
Right. But we represent the owner and the owner's best interest. But I always tell my owners, too, there is a common ground, right? There is a point in which we're depending on a tenant to take care of your asset. And so if you're constantly finding yourself nickel and diming them or, coming down on them, it just creates kind of an adversarial relationship, right? I want to get on the education side of things. So when we go to a property and there's a dirty air filter, Michael will say, hey, can I show you how to, change it out? Right. Take it more from like, let me help you as opposed to you didn't change your air filter, right? And so, the third time we're doing it, we're the tone is changing. And most people get after the third time that you're your own worst enemy in that scenario because your AC is not working when you're not changing your filter. But I think for the most part, people have good intentions and they want to take care of the property. And so we do 3 property visits a year. We try and make sure that the home is being maintained, air filters, salt and softeners. There aren't unauthorized pets in properties. I always jokingly say, pets don't get to just hang out for 10 days. You've got to have a pet deposit, pet agreement on file, unless, of course, they're emotional support animals or service animals. But, locking eyes on the property really helps us make sure that it's being maintained. And so I'll never forget, I got into property management and I read this article and it was like, property manager in Almost Ranch hadn't been in home in 5 years. And they were as an entire marijuana facility in there, like with grow lights. CPS had caught it because they had just released that technology where they were like doing drone heat. And so they were telling and seeing how much was like when we were doing those new electric meters.
They're like, these guys' filters are very clogged up. It's so hot in there.
Well, they were pulling so much power that CPS actually flagged them. And then CPS was doing like these drone overs and saw how much power the house was pulling. And it was because all these grow lights. And I was like,
so the property manager probably turned a blind eye to that one.
I was like, I am never going to be that property manager where I walk in and, a meth lab's happening or something like that. And I'm like, and if they do it and they're hiding it, good for them, but I didn't want to.
So GSG doesn't stand for grow, sativa grow? No.
That's a new one. That's a new one.
I probably shouldn't know what sativa is, but anyway.
It actually stands for Go Spurs Go.
There you go. Is it really?
It does.
No way.
Everybody thinks it's CSG for Courtney Gill, and I'm like, no, it's GSG. When I I had to come up with a name quickly. And at the time, we had a coach owner that we property managed for, and I had 2 players in 2 of the properties. And so I was like, go Spurs, go, sounds great. And so, but it's crazy how people are like, what? And I'm like, no, it's really for Go Spurs Go. And so
I was trying to figure out what that stood for too. So.
Yeah, no, Go Spurs Go.
So are you a big Spurs fan?
I am born and raised here, and so definitely miss the big 3: Tim, Tony, and Manu.
Well, there's some excitement now with Wemby, and especially the second year coming up. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I got season tickets, so I was contemplating, kind of just giving them up, and I was like, well, we'll just kind of be patient with them.
With kids, it's a big commitment. That's like 44 games. And so I had season tickets years ago in like 2009. Then I had Vivian. And then I kind of went to like, let me split them with somebody else. And then I quartered them with somebody else. And now I'm like, I'll go. And
You still have them?
No, we ended up giving them up. My mom and I had split them at one point, and it just, life became so chaotic and the commitment. And the older you get, you find time is short, and now we're trying to venture out and do more stuff like go to the U.S. Open and go to the Derby and things. And so it just becomes like, where do you want to invest your time?
Yeah, just travel more kind of experience. You go to concerts a lot, right?
We're big concert goers.
Did you go to Morgan Wallen?
My daughters did. My daughters have been to 3 Morgan Wallens.
That's where we went to go see Morgan Wallen at
My mom
Vegas.
was there.
Okay.
Yes, my mom saw Morgan Wallen that was Friday night, right? Yeah.
Well, I used to Thursday, Friday night, but we went Friday night.
Yeah, mom was there Friday night. She was down in the pit. She had a poster that said "Help a Grandma Out." She was trying to get a poster signed for my kids. Yeah,
nice.
So we saw Hootie and the Blowfish in Nashville. I'm showing my age. Last weekend, and then
I love him. I love his country too. Darius Rucker's country is really good.
Was Morgan at the Sphere?
No, he was at.
But you've been to the Sphere, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We saw you 2 there, and that was an amazing experience. But country's a little different now because I'm old school country. Of course. George Strait, Garth Brooks,
right?
Even
before
Jason
that,
Aldean-ish, that's kind of
Johnny
that.
Cash,
But this, wow, I'm not a Johnny Cash guy. That's before my time, girlfriend. I know who he is, but that's because now it's funny because the old school country is like cowboy hats, boots, and jeans. Now these guys come out like in shorts and t-shirts and backwards caps. I'm like, I don't know. I feel a little dirty watching some of the young. I mean, Morgan Wallen wasn't like that, but they had Bailey Zimmerman was playing before him, and which is a younger kid, 24 years old, and he sings good. I mean, it's a little more pop, I guess it is, but it's just changed. But it's still fun. It's still fun to get out there and
I remember old school Pat Green. Like I was, in the 90s going to his concerts back at what was that amphitheater out off 35 that I think they've Verizon way back in the day, and so I'm all way back in the day. But yeah, no, we're definitely big concert goers and just doing life, right? We did the Kentucky Derby, 150th running of the Derby. Nice. And so just trying to, find the balance.
Did Michael like that?
Michael did. Well, and Michael's he's a big gambler. He likes to play the lottery. And so I have to tell a quick funny story. We're there and some friends of ours who are real estate agents in Kentucky had graciously hosted us, and he and his part-time gig is a sports announcer for ESPN. So
wait, Michael?
No, Mike Gandolfo,
okay, gotcha,
this agent that was hosting us. And so I've known Mike Gandolfo for years and his family. And so we fly up there and they're like, let us host you, right? And I'm like, well, that's nice, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're like in Millionaires Row, where all the, reporters are, and we're having this great time, and we're in these fancy clothes, which I never wear, right? So Michael goes, he's like, I'm going to go gamble. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, right? So he comes back and his eyes are like super wide. And he's like, I made a mistake. And I'm thinking, like, where are all these people? What did you do? And he's like, I thought I was making a $20 bet, and it was $120. He goes, I boxed it like they told me to. Well, he hit the trifecta and he ended up making $1,000 on that bet. And I was like, and we're done. No more gambling the rest of the trip. Nice. And so we had a great time doing that and just experiencing life. The thing about technology I've learned to embrace with property management is with our software, I can do almost everything from my phone now. And so when we're here, we're very much boots on the ground. We schedule our property visits. We're very dialed in and methodical. But we're definitely taking more time off, right? And enjoying the downtime and running a team. I've had to really learn to be a leader, less of
just delegate more
and lean into my team. I have an amazing team. And so lean into them, grow them up. I took Rosa to the conference we were at in San Diego.
So you did the Buffini?
I've done Buffini for 20 years.
Is that like your main business coach that you leaned off of? I know Katie does that also, Tracy.
Yep.
And this was his last year?
This is his last mastermind. He had done 25 masterminds. And so he went out with a bang. Talk about living life with no limits. He had Eric Wainmeyer, I think is how you pronounce his last name, summited Mount Everest, and he's blind. Talks about the value of a team, right? Wow. In that environment, you have to listen, because right is a 12,000 foot drop and to the left is a 9,000 foot drop. So everything your team says, you have to be very dialed into, right? And you have to have a lot of trust. He had Vanessa Van Edwards on there, who talks a lot about warmth and competency and how people judge you within the first 20 seconds they meet you, right? How you show up, smiling, things like that really go to how people trust you in the long run. He had Damian West. I've heard him before, Coffee Bean. Have you heard that story? Him and John Gordon partnered up to write that book. Talks about in life, if you put yourself in a pot of boiling water, if you're a carrot, you become soft, right, from the hard water. If you're an egg, you become hard from boiling water. But if you're a coffee bean, you change the water around you, right, because you turn it into coffee. And so Damian West went into prison and promised his mom that he wouldn't join a gang or get tattooed, and decided he was going to change the lives of people around him. And he helped, I want to say, like 100 prisoners get their GEDs and taught them all these skills. He was a Wall Street banker who unfortunately got addicted to drugs and was arrested in Dallas as a part of a very large sting operation. And so he had a ton of knowledge, right? And he shared that with other people in prison they were lifers, right? The chances of them getting out were slim to none, but really taught them the value of improving themselves. And so Brian Buffini is one of my favorite people on the planet to listen to. He's very structured with his presentations. He gives you workbooks. He has
what is it, like a monthly, weekly session? Or
so my coach and I meet twice a month, and then we have a leadership team meeting with my group once a month. But Brian himself has a podcast. It's a Good Life, and he does that weekly. And then he does about 6 events a year. He does Mastermind, which he's no longer doing, the Peak Experience, Leadership Conference, which I'm going to in September, and then 4 kind of smaller events sprinkled throughout, like there's one in Nashville. And so he just talks about really taking care of biblical principles like reaping what you sow, right? Developing your garden, fertilizing it, talking about working your clients and having relationships, writing personal notes, which has been lost in today's texting world,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
I'm a big note writer. I write about 2,000 notes a year. So,
really?
That's one thing that, texts come and go, but people hang on to personal notes, birthday cards, things like that. Calling them. I'm not as good at calling. I feel like I'm bugging people. And then community, right? Yeah. So we do community events with our database. We try and do those. I try and do lunches with my homeowners that are here in town. We do a huge event every year, a pie party for our clients in November. I partner with a local bakery and do pumpkin cheesecakes. And so my way of saying thank you to our database.
Is this all just skills you learned from having a coach? I think that's so important. I think the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs is I'd venture to, and I just started, well, I've never really done a business coach, to be honest with you, but I'm kind of in the middle of starting to think about doing one. And, but I think part of it is because in the entrepreneur world, a lot of times we feel like we know what we're doing and no, we got this. And sometimes that, criticism or that feedback that you get, sometimes you take it and maybe personally, or you're like, well, he doesn't know what he's doing or what he's talking about. And we're so stubborn and, we take pride, unfortunately, of how we do it instead of learning to change and evolve or taking that feedback from people that have been there, done that, know,
for sure,
and are successful. Because I've always tried to model myself off successful people. But I think having a business coach is so valuable. Is that something you'd recommend for every entrepreneur?
Out of the 3 things I can say in this world that made me, have gotten me where I've gotten, a business coach, virtual assistants, and then just God has blessed me with the ability to get up every morning, right? 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. I can go conquer the world at that point. And so, but leaning to coach, and I've had basically 3 coaches through Buffini over the 20 years. I started off with a coach who I'll never forget. I mean, he would make me cry. And I had a small child and I was single. And, here was this guy who was a baseball umpire in his spare time. And I'm like, Billy, I don't even know how you relate to me, right? Like, how do you appreciate the fact I haven't slept in 6 weeks? And he's still with the company. And I actually saw him last week. And I was like, I can't thank you enough for just continuing to push me beyond comfort. And I think sometimes too, as entrepreneurs that are making payroll, paying rent, and having a little money left over, you kind of get comfortable. You're like, well, I'm doing better than 90% of life, right? Sure. And so really being pushed. And in this season, I'm running a team. And you have this, at least I do, this weird Catholic guilt of like, I'm not doing every single lease. I'm not doing every single thing. And I've had to take a step back and realize that my talent now lies in motivating and helping other people reach their dreams and goals and their wealth building, right? That my value is having a conversation with a homeowner about how they build their generational wealth now, less about, did we order that carpet to be cleaned, right? So that's been a transformation. And I just jumped into leadership coaching, which is a lot more intense, a lot more expensive. But I can't remember who said it was Jim Rohn or Dale Carnegie. But basically, if you don't invest in yourself, no one else will. Right. And so I've read anywhere from 5 to 10% you should make of your earnings go back into investing in yourself, whether that be in a business coach. And I have coaches in every aspect of my life, right? I have a strength and training coach. I have a financial planner who's also a coach. I mean, you really have to realize, lean into people whose gifts and talents are there.
Their expertise,
For sure. And even with I tell my vendors, you're coaching me. I don't know. I mean, the other day you went to a property with me and you knew exactly the brand of flooring the homeowner was talking about. And I'm just standing there and I'm like, I don't even know why I tried to figure this out. Why I didn't just call Richard off the bat and figure out how to solve that problem.
I think the thing that we can agree on though is the more we know that we don't know as much as we think we do, the better. Because when we think we know everything, that's when we kind of limit ourselves. And then just kind of, going back to the delegation, when relying on your team, trusting people, trusting your vendors, trusting the experts is important, because then if you take it all on yourself to always try to figure it out, that's my weakness is I shouldn't say it's control, but maybe it is, but just that delegation part for me, I feel like I have to have my hands in everything. And sometimes that'll hold you back and you just got to learn how to trust. But I've been burned in the past, and I don't know if I've shared this, but I just been, I had an employee that took money from us. And so it's like you get fearful. Now all of a sudden you're like, everything's looked through a very skeptical eye, and it's just hard to kind of get back to. That's part of being an entrepreneur too. Part of being a business leader is learning to trust. Eventually, you just kind of let go. And I always say, let go, let God. For
sure.
me, faith for me helps me big time in trusting, the process or where we're at. And it's funny because like you were saying, like even if it's the little that comes in out of what we take in and get out, I mean, that profit, or a lot of times people think, oh, you get this big job and you have all these properties, like you must have a ton of money. It's like, no, it's just more that you have to kind of manage and funnel and be smart with. And it's just sometimes the more you have to, the more headaches you get and stress.
The problems just become bigger. I know problems never go away. I remember thinking like, I'm going to make X amount of dollars and the problems are all going to go away. And it's like, no. They just become bigger and grander in scale and become more complicated. And, getting back to being just a connector, I've interviewed for multiple leadership positions and roles over the years. And I always say my leadership strength is being a connector, right? I will never be the smartest person in the room, but I know somebody who knows that, or knows somebody who knows somebody, I
think that's part of my skill set. I mean, I think it's part of the way I've been wired too, is to be able to try to hook people up. And I find it like just satisfying to be able to connect people, to your point. And then them say, man, thank you. This really worked out well and stuff. I mean, sometimes you'll get some misses and those, but when you start trusting people and you're yoked around the same group of people that have the same mindset, that's where you're going in the right direction. Especially in business, as you get older too, you want to be around people that can help you still grow. And I always tell, I was telling Tammy too, that's like, I still like these next 10 years for me, I still have goals and I have the ability, God gives me the ability to wake up every day, open my eyes, and, every time I wake up, that's you're winning,
Right, for sure.
Like Charlie Sheen said, #winning, that's
for sure.
It's like there's so much opportunity, and it's all in your perspective and how you see things, but for us to still grow, and I don't know if I'll get to the point where, because complacency is the biggest killer for a lot of businesses, obviously. But I'll probably get to the point where I just need to take a deep breath and kind of sit back. But I'm not there yet. It's hard for me even just to take a few days off. I don't know if that's a good thing either.
We're going on a cruise in September for 7 days to Alaska, and I'm kind of like already it was a bucket list. Like we're trying to do all 50 states, and so Alaska really the easiest way to navigate that is through a cruise, right? So I kind of knew, but now it's getting closer. I'm like breathing into a bag because a girlfriend of mine just came back and she's like, "Yeah, the internet doesn't work very well." And I was like, what?
See, that's to your point, the technology is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it's like you can't just turn it off. And that's my weakness too. It's like I can't.
It's that drive that you always. And one of the reasons, like I had kiddos and I went right back to work, and being self-employed, I think it's very hard to start that train up again. Right, when you take time off, it's very hard to kind of start those and the relationships and all that. We have a good friend, Adrian Galvan. Right, he takes 30, 60, 90 days off at a time, and I'm like, dude, you're my hero.
Exactly.
Because I'd be like, yeah, I'm not coming back. Peace out. I'm just gonna get off at Tahiti and never come back.
Well, so he's one that does that, and then Tracy's Blackwell does that now too.
Sure.
But I think with her journey is a little different because she's built up that ability and team to be able to do that.
For sure.
Where she can just not worry about it because she has such good freaking people working for her. It's like, that's awesome. And that's like, I look at her as like, man, I aspire to.
Well, she had a great teaching with being at HEB, right? That's part of their philosophy.
That systems, which is beneficial for sure.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Because you said your mom was in property management. I'm guessing you had a little idea of kind of how to do it. Did you have any siblings at all?
I have two brothers. I have a baby. We call him Baby Giant. He's 6'7". My mom had a baby in her 20s, 30s, and 40s. So
Are you the youngest? Or?
I'm the oldest. I am the oldest. And so I have a 25-year-old brother, and I have a 35-year-old brother. And so I'm the only one that went down the entrepreneurial route.
So you were super independent, I'm assuming, at an early age.
My dad is a 10-time Ironman, and so drive is just in my blood.
Wait, do you do any Ironman?
No, not at all. I tell Dad, I'm like, and my daughter is very athletic, and I'm like, woo, that just skipped right over this generation, didn't it? So
you're like, thank goodness.
Yeah, I was the kid that dropped out of dance team at semester to debate in high school. So I had a great high school run doing debate, and I found it served me better than my athletic skills. So, but yeah, being in a family business, right? People are like, oh, you work with your mom. It's like, oh, that has its own fair share of challenges. Oh, you work with your husband. Oh, that has its fair share of challenges, as you know, working with a spouse. And so, getting back to when we were talking about getting complacent, a lot of times I think that's what happens in property management is it just becomes this like monthly routine, right? And even though no day is the same, I think where property managers kind of get a bad reputation is you just kind of rest, right? You just
assume everything's fine.
Right. And so for me, how I broke free of the complacency is we did the spinoffs, right? We did the renovation company and we did other things that we used our current database. So I wasn't recreating the wheel. I wasn't creating a new garden, but I was harvesting. Instead of just having corn come out of the garden, I realized, in the spring, if I do something else, I can mix it up and I can have this. And so I think that's one avenue that property managers really miss, right? Is that there's so much opportunity for other, not necessarily just streams of income, but other things that can come from it, right? That are valuable to help you continue to grow as a human being and as a business owner as well. I'm
guessing there's slow seasons in the property management world?
Oh, yeah. April through August is our busy season. So we schedule all 300 leases to come up during that time period. It's PCS season here for the military, kiddos in school. So October through February gets very quiet in property management. And so this year we kind of pivoted and we worked on a masterclass series that I'm launching that will teach you basically how to start a property management company. We're calling it Property Management Blueprints. Yeah. So it lays out checklists and things you probably didn't even think of. And using my 24 years of useless knowledge, all of the failures, I always tell people I failed forward a lot. So, here are some things that I tried that didn't really work out so well. And here's why they didn't work out well. And just like being transparent. No one died from failing, right? Yeah. It's in your brain and get up. And what I perceive as to be a failure, most people have forgotten about or, doesn't really impact their lives. So just, keep getting up and keep trying. I'm reading The Alchemist right now, and they talk about it's that 8th time to get up. I'm rereading The Alchemist, actually.
That's like a hard read, isn't it?
it's not bad. I had read it many moons ago, and then at the conference, several of the speakers were talking about The Alchemist, and I thought, it's been a hot minute. I'm going to reread the book. And so they talk about the person who gets up the 8th time, right? You just got to keep showing up. And as a
for sure.
business owner, just keep showing up.
It's awesome that you're forwarding and sharing all this, your experiences and trying to just teach others with that. That's huge community service right there alone.
Save them some late nights and lost hair.
Most people, and maybe I wouldn't even say it's a culture thing, but like I know family members that it's just all to themselves. Like they do their thing and they're not going to share it with anybody else. And I shouldn't say family members, but like it's just that generation, maybe it's generations or the culture sometimes. In my culture, like, and there's a saying too. It's like with the Hispanic culture, it seems like we try to pull each other down more instead of trying to push each other forward. And you're doing the opposite of that, obviously. And I think even like in our networking group, and we did the Mega Mixer the other day I went to, and I actually went up to a competitor of mine and start chatting with him. I say, hey, man, just introduce myself. Because I think there's a way to coexist and to collaborate and to help each other move forward. Even if we're in the same industry or if, you're trying to help someone up in whatever industry, just kind of what we normally do. It's like, it's because we've been there, those failures. And sometimes, I knew when I was younger, I didn't have as much of a support group, even that I have now, even though I'm more experienced, but I have other guys that I can, be accountable with. And then also, but just kind of feed them, some, hey, this is what I experienced, and kind of let them, everyone's going to go through their experiences and their failures. And I think that's what helps us kind of propel ourselves forward. But it's just good to have that community and having people that can share that. And it's going to help down the line. And everything that you work for, everything that you strive for, everything that you believe in, everything that you hustle for and grind for, like you're just building up to yourself to a certain ceiling, so that way someone else can kind of stand on that, and that'll be their floor to move forward. And that's sacrifice as entrepreneurs, as parents, however you want to market is what we do.
Sure.
And if you do it the right way, you can definitely help many people. So it's really awesome.
Zig Ziglar talks about you can get anything in life that you want as long as you help enough people. And so it's true. You just never know who's going to be open one door for you and turn into something else. And so it doesn't always work out. I have my share of bad days where I'm like, I am done. But, you get up again and you keep at it, and it always seems to work out. So
do you so part of this podcast, I try to sprinkle in a little faith, and we didn't even share that beforehand, but how much is faith kind of is a part of your business?
Huge. One of the things that this conference talked about too is Damian West says he has one prayer every morning, and it's, God, give me the ability to see what you have in my vision of how to serve others. And so I think sometimes we get lost in that as a society. I have my love-hate with large groups just because I think it just becomes kind of, everybody's personal philosophy. But there are so many biblical principles that I've applied to my business that never fail me. And you just go back to the garden and reaping what you sow and all of that, and knowing that somebody's bigger than me. Because at the end of the day, if you don't believe in something bigger than you, you're not going anywhere.
You'll get humbled real quick.
What is it, that expression? A humble pie is the pastry that's never tasty. So, just really leaning into that and knowing that at the end of the day, God never lets you down, right? It may not be in your timing. It may not be what you expected. I have had my fair share of definitely setbacks, and they have just been setups for comebacks.
For sure.
And so I encourage everybody, it doesn't have to be in a church. It doesn't have to be in an organized format, but just take the time, 5 minutes a day. And even if you don't want to go down the religious path, just an attitude of gratitude, right? I start every morning, thank you for the roof over my head and the food in my belly. And one of the speakers really talked about, like, you don't have to get up at 4 a.m. You get to get up at 4 a.m. Because there are cultures where, it's dictated every single thing you do. North Korea, they get a certain amount of this, and this, and that's it, right? As a female, right? I take for granted that in other cultures, I can run a business, right? That's not standard practice. And so I've really tried to get back to the basics of being very thankful for other things that people just take for granted, right? And we don't have the biggest house or the fanciest car or anything, and it doesn't matter. I got a car that goes, right? I have employees that's just not the culture, right? They take mass transportation everywhere. Only the very wealthy have vehicles. And so I definitely would encourage people to start small and then, get involved where you are. And I do wish there was a more of a movement to be thankful out loud. I think the Olympics brought that out. Yeah, exactly. And I will say I watched a little bit of the Olympics, and a lot of the athletes did. They gave thanks to God first, and then their parents for writing the checks to get them there. But yeah, I was really happy to see that, because I definitely think that's been a departure from our society.
We don't vocalize it as much as we should, and I try to just be thankful every day and live by certain principles and get involved with other little groups to kind of help me push forward, when it comes to the faith, and go to church, of course. It's a challenge though, because it's like there's so many distractions, around you, and the moment you're doing good, that's when sometimes you forget about what's important. And then when it's going bad, then you remember, hey.
For sure. And there's a biblical principle of 20-20-20 in the morning, 20 minutes in prayer, 20 minutes in activity and movement. They call it the miracle morning. But just how you can start off your day that way. And that's why a lot of us get up so early, because that cuts off that distraction time
frame.
That's
the only time, like the quiet time is first thing in the morning.
People aren't really bugging you at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's the time that you can kind of dedicate, but it does come early.
But I think once you set that tone for the day, it just makes everything kind of gravy. So it makes it easy.
For sure.
That, so.
Absolutely.
But listen, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate
it. Thank you for coming on. You're very, very inspiring. And I know you're just a go-getter. Is that GSG? Go? No. Go Spurs, go-getter. Very encouraging, and I always commend women leaders too. It's like it's good to have that around to inspire other your daughters or anybody else that wants to get into business, because we do live in a culture that we do have that ability to do that. You pointed it out in the BNI meeting the other day, and it didn't even cross my mind, because that group's so supportive. Like, it wasn't, there's a bunch of guys and there's a handful of women, but I looked around and I was like, wow, Richard's right. These are some really cool, just hardworking ladies. And so I'm super excited that I got to be in that BNI group. Yeah, I'm glad you're in it too. Thank you so much. Yeah, and listen, anybody knows that I know, if anybody needs a good property management company and someone that's going to take care of them and watch out for their properties, I will always say I know a gal.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks, Richard. Good to see you again.